to be in the spirit of life, to be in the mix with nature and people and food and all just the natural things of life that bring joy to the heart. So keys to the kingdom, number one is joy, finding the thing that lights you up, makes you happy. From that energy, the things that you create become that much more powerful in your life. And welcome back, brothers, to the next episode of the IgKnight the King podcast. Today's episode is going to focus on the 3 keys to the kingdom. First of all, I want to apologize if you're getting my DJ voice. We just returned from the last immersion, the in-person event for IgKnight the King, and my voice is still making a recovery in the most beautiful way. Energy was definitely moved at that event. We're going to have a special episode we're recording next week with one of our brothers, Trey Ford, to break down, debrief, and integrate that immersive experience and share with you, men, some of the energy that happened there. But today's episode, I want to focus on 3 keys to the kingdom that we talked about at that immersion, get a little more into some framework, contextual things. And those 3 things, those 3 keys to the kingdom that we're going to talk about on today's episode are joy, standards and boundaries, and vision. These are 3 essential pieces, 3 keys to a man in his kingdom. And they are in that order for a reason. Joy is it's lacking, is my assessment, and taking the pulse of the men that were at the immersion and just men that I connect with. And a lot of us, we're working hard out there. We're making things happen. We're providing. We're doing all the things that we need to do, checking off the to-do list, showing up for our partners and our families and our businesses, often feeling like our cup is empty. So one of the themes of our immersion in the essence of joy was to fill up our cup and have it be overflowing and receiving energy from a higher power, a divine source, God, if you will, that pours into us as men so we can then share that energy out with others in a place of abundance and not of lack and not of feeling like we're just pouring from an empty cup. And so many men out there, and if you're one of those men that feel like you just give and give and give and your cup is bone dry and you're just trying to find more energy to give into your life, ultimately just feeling overwhelmed, stressed, depleted, tired, and wanting to say fuck it and give up, this episode is for you, because what I will tell you is you don't do all the right things in life to then feel joy. You must feel joy, and then all the right things will fall into place. And that's a big paradigm shift and an easy platitude to say, but it's really true. So finding those things in your life that fill you up as a man. And this is a beautiful piece, because for every man that's different, whether that's art, whether that's music, whether that's working out. It should be all of those things in my judgment, but there's something that lights you up, that makes your day, that fills your cup, that floats your boat. Find that thing and do it consistently and get energized, because from an energized state, what you create will be that much greater. My wife always says the energy from which you create guides and determines your creation. I fully believe that. It's one of the teachings that I also share. The energy from which you create guides and determines your creation. And if it's done from joy, you'll experience joy. You will share joy. You will spread joy. You will give your blessing more in life. And it is about having an overflowing cup and keeping that flow going. It's not about hoarding. It's not about me, and just holding on tightly to a finite resource. It's literally allowing, and we're in a king energy, it's allowing God force, universal force, to come through us, to imbue us. I mean, we are it. It's like we're swimming in it, learning how to connect with that and direct that out. And the dance that creates with life is extraordinary. It's joyful. So as men, we must find that joy again. We must find a joie de vivre, the joy for life. I'll be spending a month in France with my family this summer, that we do every other year. And so much of it is just to be in joy, to be in the spirit of life, to be in the mix with nature and people and food and all just the natural things of life that bring joy to the heart. So keys to the kingdom, number one is joy, finding the thing that lights you up, makes you happy. From that energy, the things that you create become that much more powerful in your life. And I got to see so many men this weekend light up through the various processes and activities that we had going on at the IgKnight the King immersion. And all of it was designed to bring more joy. And as I said, it was the first thing we did because that was a major pattern interrupt that needs to happen. We're so focused on achievement, success, getting to that next trophy, or even just getting to that next day where we're going to do it all over again. And the energy it takes to get up and go and keep that momentum going in our life. And at the same time, having to deal with all the challenges and stresses that inevitably are going to be there. So if we can do that from a place of joy, from a place of gratitude, from a place of abundance, we naturally experience more of it. I mean, this is like manifestation 101, right? But it's hard to do. And as men, we often take life very seriously. And although life can be serious and there's times for that, it often overshadows just the pure experience of joy and happiness. And it's such an important part of the kingdom and others in your kingdom, your family, your children, your wives, your girlfriends, partners, that they feel joy because that's what you're radiating. You know, there was a period of time in my family where I earned the nickname the grump, and I didn't like it because it's exactly what it sounds like. And I was like, got to a point where I was like, I don't want to be the grump anymore. I don't want to have people feel a certain way when I walk into a room. Well, I want them to feel a certain way, but I want them to feel good. I want them to feel positive. I want them to feel their energy goes up when I'm around, not, oh, here's the grump and I want to scatter and get away from that. So it was a real gut check for me. And I posit it to you men out there to ask yourself that question, and what's the energy you're giving off most of the time to the people that are around you the most, which ultimately is the people that you're closest to and love you the most, your family. So what's the energy you're giving off, and what can you do to reclaim your joy? What can you do to find that joy again and let it be fun? You know, although we call it the work, it is fun. It's deeply nourishing. It's deeply satisfying. So that was the first key to the kingdom, was just bringing joy back into our life, and the second key was standards and boundaries. And as a king in his kingdom, we must have standards and boundaries. We must be having the walls of the kingdom be secure and not allowing enemy forces, whatever you want to call those enemy forces, to be able to infiltrate our kingdom. And believe me, there are a lot of forces trying to infiltrate your kingdom, trying to infiltrate your mind, trying to infiltrate your children. And we must, as kings, hold a strong, literal, and energetic boundary with ourselves and our family and what we allow into our space, whether that be through technology, through social media, through people we interact with, just the foods we drink, the air we breathe, the water all of that stuff that has codes in it that are potentially trying to infiltrate the sanctity of your kingdom. And it's important as a king. We talk about the pillars of kingship, of order and sovereignty. And as a man, you must have sovereignty within yourself and your autonomy. You must have order in your kingdom. And what that looks like is having standards and boundaries, because your standard is your minimum of what you will allow in your life. And when you're operating below standard, you're operating at a low level where things are breaking down, or what we'd also call energy poor. And that's not sustainable. So you must define what those standards are in your life. And those standards are around your physical health, your emotional health, your financial health, your mental health, your relational and familial health, and your spiritual health. And you must do an inventory of these areas of life and see, what are my baseline standards? What do I say it doesn't drop below this? And if it has, how are you raising that up? Because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And you may have high emotional standards, but low financial standards, or vice versa. They need to be even throughout. They need to be assessed in your life. This is some big work that we did around standards and boundaries in our work this last weekend at the IgKnight immersion, and having men define their core values and their king's code of conduct, because all of this determines what your standards are in your life and what boundaries you're going to hold in your life. And those two things form the floor and the walls of your kingdom. So your standards are your floors, your boundaries are your walls. And this is such a key to the kingdom of a man, because when you don't do this, this is where people will take advantage of you. This is where people have certain expectations of you. This is where you will fall into the role of the pleaser, where you're giving, 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 trying to make everyone happy because everyone's asking you for something, until you either implode or you explode on people, frankly. And that will certainly cause problems and destroy relationships. So the gut check here is to see, where have I boundaries on people that I haven't even defined or expressed to them. So your boundaries must be defined for yourself. And then once they're defined, they need to be expressed. If you're holding a boundary with someone, you haven't expressed what that boundary is, and then get upset that they're not holding to your boundary, well, you never told them what it was. So once you tell them what it is, yes, then you need to enforce that boundary. Some people will make you very aware of what their boundary is, and people will still continue to push at that. And then people won't hold that up, and then won't hold that up. They don't know how to hold a boundary. And they'll often vacillate between this weakling and tyrant energy that shows up in the Shadow King, where when you push someone and you push someone and you push someone, and you're seeing where their boundary is, and they're taking it and they're taking it and they're taking it. And finally, one day they blow up and they explode on you, and they forcibly take their power back. Now that weakling, you pushed him so hard, he became the tyrant in you. When he becomes the tyrant in you, the tyrant will destroy, the tyrant will belittle, the tyrant will clear everything in its path to not feel insignificant. And this is often a polarity that exists in men in their psyche, stronger than any other archetype that I've seen, is this back and forth between the tyrant and the weakling. And so much of that comes down to not holding a certain standard in your life, and not holding the boundaries and expressing what they are and being able to enforce it. Because once you have that solid floor, once you have those solid walls, your kingdom is secure. Things are still going to try to infiltrate, things are still going to try to get in. But when that foundation, those walls are solid, it can withstand it. And then you do things in your life to reinforce it. You do the work, you continue to do the self reflection to reinforce those foundations, those walls. Make no bones about it. There's going to be energies, people, circumstances that are absolutely 24/7 going to be trying to infiltrate and get into your kingdom, and to sow seeds of doubt into your kingdom, and to take it down in one way or another. Not to sound so fatalistic, but these are the energies at play as men, whether it's our own stuff, our familial stuff, our ancestral stuff, just stuff that's floating around in the ether, in the field around us. Like, we must be vigilant. As Aldous Huxley said, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Again, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And as a king, standards and boundaries are the way that you hold this. So we talked about joy being a key to the kingdom. We talked about standards and boundaries being a key to the kingdom. And the last one is vision. That's the third key to the kingdom, is vision, and having a vision for your life. And I really want to speak to this because I see a lot of men either go really too big on their vision or too small. And it's important in our work, we would call it the sacred third, to really find that thing that stretches you, that brings you farther in your life, but isn't so big that inside that it's totally impossible. So you basically written into the plan that you don't even have to go for it because it's going to be impossible. Or a lot of men just play small and don't even allow themselves to experience the bigness of what their vision is. Then men have to think like, oh, is it my vision to save the world and do all that? It's like, well, that's beautiful, but like, in what way would you do that? In what way could you do that? In what way would you, as an individual, be able to make an impact that can then have an impact? It is interesting to me in a beautiful way that when it comes down to it, what people and men specifically want in their lives is to help other people, is to have the world be a better place, is to have us all get along in a way that we know is possible. Because once we find that inner peace, once we find that inner connection, we just want to experience that with others in community and brotherhood and family and relationships. And it's like, well, if we can do that in our own lives, what if everyone can do that? And that's really what it always ultimately comes down to. And that can show up in the ways of abundance and in finances and community, in legacy. There's so many ways that this shows up. But we have to have that vision in our life and continually look at it and revise it. It's not just a one and done, you put it in a drawer, never look at it again. And I've also found in our culture, especially with younger men, where there's an expectation, because I think of technology and just how fast energy moves nowadays, where we expect things to happen so quickly. And what I would offer to you men out there that maybe feel like that, like, why aren't things happening quick enough? Every process requires time, and we must trust the unfolding and trust the timing. And I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, oh, trust the timing, trust the timing. And every time something's happened in my life and I've taken time to reflect and integrate and look at how things played out, it always worked out exactly in the timing it was supposed to. And if it happened sooner, it wouldn't have been the same. If it happened later, it would be hard to imagine. And we have to trust that at the end of the day, when we start really macro out view of our life, things happen at exactly the right moment so the next moment can come in. And something often we say in our group at Ignite the King is it's not happening to us, it's happening for us. And in order to embody that standard of spirituality, we must trust that phrase. We must trust that things are happening for us. And not some of the time when it's convenient, all of the time, especially when the circumstances can present themselves as pain or problems or challenges or things that we say, why me? Like, why am I having to experience this right now? And I don't deserve this. It's fair and all the things. And I'm saying all that because I've said all of these things in my life. And looking back later on, I'm like, oh, that's what needed to happen. That's exactly how it needed to happen. It couldn't have happened any other way. And if that's the case every time, to have the perspective and the awareness when you're in it, when those things are showing up, this wasn't part of my vision. I say, well, but it's here now and it's meant to shape you and it's meant to call you forward. And how do you answer that call? And this is where the king energy really needs to come into play, where it's like, I'm answering the call, I'm stepping up. Yeah, it's fucking scary. Yeah, it takes courage. I mean, I'm raising my hand. I want to run away half the time, but you know what? When I think of what's at stake and I think who I'm responsible for, who I'm actually doing all this for with my wife and my child, then it's like, I'll do anything for that. And if you're a man out there listening to this that has a family, is it just not feeling inspired to really take the reins of your family? I would call you forward and say, what's there? Where did you lose yourself? Where did you lose your passion? Where did you lose your fire? Where did you lose your joy? Because there was a time when you were like, I am the king of this kingdom. This is my wife. This is my girlfriend. This is my family. This is my child. And this is that inflection point where it's like, do I dig in deeper in my life? Do I find that resolve? Do I have a vision for my life? When was the last time I looked at that? When was the last time I updated that? Have I ever done that in my life? Have you ever allowed yourself to dream bigger than you ever thought were possible for what you have in your life or want in your life or what's possible in your life? And if you were to really take inventory, you probably have most of those things already. It's not outside of you. And that's the big paradox. That's the big joke, the big cosmic joke of all this, is that we're constantly looking for fulfillment in these things and experiences or people. And it's like, at the end of the day, when you look at your life right now, it's like you're already most likely filled with those things that you desire. And what it would be like if you just amplify that, which you already have and already have access to, and not need it to come from something external. And I'm learning this lesson. I mean, this is part of being human. This is part of being a man. This is part of the work and the growth. And for me, it comes back to vision. It comes back to, what's the vision for my life? What's the vision for my family? What's the vision for my work in the world? What's the impact that I see? And I've been recently working on this, and something I'll share in a little while about Ignite the King, but things that we're working on internally to get our message out bigger, to have a bigger impact in the world, to reach more men, to see that men all over the world on some level are engaging with this work and learning the tools and learning how to have self-reflection, and to be able to gather in groups where they're seen and they're heard and they're doing the work, and that legacy and that impact lives on for hundreds of years, for generations upon generations. I mean, just starting to even allow myself to tune into the bigness of a vision where it's like, whoa, that fucking scares me. And your vision should scare you. It should bring you to the edge of your seat, because you're like, wow, if this was really to happen, what would that mean for me? Who would I have to become? That's a good vision. That's a vision worth pursuing. You got to have the joy. You got to have the energy. You got to have the drive. You have to have the stamina. You have to have the life force to pursue a vision that big. And this is the trap that most men will fall into, because the energy drops. We get consumed by life. We get consumed by food. We get consumed by media. We get consumed by work, and it keeps us playing small. And year after year after year go by. Just to date this episode, we're at the end of May of 2025. We're already almost halfway through this year. And it's like, boom, where did it go? And as I get older, as I age, each year becomes a smaller fraction of my life. Feels like each year moves faster and faster and faster. And it's time, men, that we jump into the fire, that we jump into that ring, that arena. We get off the bench, out of the crowd, and we get in the game. For most of the men that I work with, it's this inertia barrier. If they know what to do most of the time, when you clear some of the energy, when you clear the emotion, the clarity of what needs to happen, like I don't need to tell men what to do. They know innately, they know in their king energy what they need to do in their life once they clear that energy and emotion. But do they use that energy and emotion for action? Because that's what emotion comes down to. We've talked about this so many times on this podcast. Emotion is energy in motion. The purpose of emotion is to radically shift your physiology, to prepare your body for action. But if you don't do anything with it and it recycles back in your body, then there's no progress. So it's about activating that energy and then directing that energy. Activating the energy, directing the energy, activating the energy, and directing the energy. And sometimes you can't do this on your own. This is, why we have our immersive events. This is why this podcast exists, to give you the leverage, to give you the tools, to give you the motivation, if you want to call it that, to take action. Tony Robbins always says massive action is the cure-all, and to have a vision bigger than you could imagine. So to start to wrap up this episode, to review the 3 keys to the kingdom, and we're going to do a special episode next week, as I mentioned, a spotlight episode with one of our brothers, Trey Ford the third. Amazing man. I'm super excited to have him on the show. Just his presence, his prophecy, his being will transmit a voice that's really needed in the men's world today. And then specifically, we're going to share some of the transformations, some of the work that happened this last weekend at the IgKnight the King immersion. I'm like, I need someone to help me debrief this, because it was beyond the beyond. It was one of the most powerful immersions I've ever experienced. This marked our 5-year anniversary with IgKnight the King, which we're super proud of. And it really laid out a vision for the next 5 years of IgKnight 2030, and starting to walk toward that new vision, getting enrollment and buy-in from our brotherhood to really see how we can impact the world in an exponential way in the next 5 years. So I'm excited to talk about all that with him next week. And again, to review our episode from today, the 3 keys to the kingdom. This is joy as a king, finding joy again, getting your cup filled up, let it overflow so you can pour it into every area of your life. Such an essential key to the kingdom. The second key was standards and boundaries, and standards forming the floor of your kingdom, boundaries forming the walls of your kingdom, and making that kingdom impenetrable to outside forces that want to take you down, to bring you down, to cause problems in your life, to infiltrate what's going on in your world. And then the third key to the kingdom is vision, and having a vision that scares you, and allowing yourself to dream big and vision big and see what's possible for yourself, for your family, for your impact in the world. And ultimately, in my experience, most men want to have a positive impact in the world, that want to share this learning that they've had with others, because they know when everyone gets this, that we'll have a much different world. And if we all do our part in that collectively, that adds up to a lot and has a huge impact. That's why we do what we do with IgKnight, because we're here to be a nodal point and a voice for men out there. And as I'm talking with my voice, it's barely here, because I got to really move some energy this weekend myself, and do the work and personally be a man on the weekend. And I'll talk more about that when we do our immersion debrief next week. But again, the 3 keys to the kingdom: joy, standards and boundaries, and vision. Take some time this week to tune into that, to see where maybe you've dropped your standards, maybe where you've dropped and allowed your boundaries to come, or where you didn't hold them with someone in the right way. And just to find some joy in your life. Do something that just brings you joy for no other reason but bringing you joy. I hope you men have a beautiful rest of your day. Look forward to our next episode. Make sure to comment, like, share, subscribe to the channel, and we will talk to you soon, I hope.